Thank you for joining us for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Maya Trabulsi. This is the week COVID-19 took center stage in the presidential campaign in a very personal way for President Trump. Late Thursday night, President Trump announced that he and First Lady Melania Trump tested positive for the virus. We'll have more on that in a moment. Locally, San Diego has more than 47,000 cases of COVID-19 since March and nearly 800 deaths. We are seeing progress when it comes to schools. San Diego Unified will begin limited in-person classes later this month. SDSU, which saw a large outbreak in August and September, will resume in-person classes a week from Monday. Much of America woke up to the news on Friday that COVID-19 has arrived at the White House. President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, and a close White House aide have tested positive. And now the president will stay for a few days at Walter Reed Medical Center on the advice of doctors. Emily Schmidt has more from Washington.
Just hours after a recording where President Trump outlined a positive outlook for ending COVID-19.
I just want to say that the end of the pandemic is in sight.
The president tweeted news of a positive test for the virus for both him and his wife. Trump, who at age 74 and overweight falls in a higher risk category, tweeted, "We will get through this together," as did the First Lady. The virtual messages set off a very real look at who else may have been exposed to Trump. Earlier Thursday, advisor Hope Hicks tested positive for coronavirus. The vice president and his wife tested negative Friday.
The president does have mild symptoms. He continues to be not only in good spirits, but very energetic.
But the Trump's quarantine follows a period of campaigning, including a private fundraiser at his golf club in New Jersey on Thursday, a Wednesday rally in Minnesota, and the first presidential debate Tuesday.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
Just a few feet away from Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden.
But the first family did not wear masks during the debate.
The Bidens tweeted well wishes. The former vice president also getting testing Friday morning. The Secretary of State says the White House will do contact tracing of people who have been to the White House. All of this happening with the election just 32 days away. I'm Emily Schmidt reporting.
Just 3 days earlier, former Vice President Joe Biden shared the stage with President Trump. On Friday, the Democratic nominee said he and his wife, Jill Biden, tested negative. He thanks people for their concern and reminded everyone to wash their hands, maintain social distance, and wear a mask. At least 4 members of the City Council have been forced to quarantine after coming into contact with a worker who tested positive. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more on the risk of COVID-19 exposure at City Hall.
I don't have any symptoms, first and foremost.
District 6 City Council member Chris Cate was inside the council chambers on Tuesday.
What value do we get from that? Mr. IBA, it's $5 million.
A City of San Diego spokesperson says someone else who was in that room has now tested positive for COVID-19.
I was advised by my doctor to wait a few days before I get tested.
City officials say they've told every person who came in close contact with the positive individual to quarantine for 2 weeks. That includes Councilmember Cate, who has a wife and 2 children.
I'm away from my wife and my kids. If I do go out and about, to get food or whatever else, I'm masked up inside my house as well too, just to be cautious.
City Council President Georgette Gomez released a statement saying officials are in the process of evaluating how to safely move forward with city business. There is a City Council meeting scheduled for next week, and some have already been participating virtually.
I don't think the city business needs to be impacted negatively by it. I'm chairing a committee on Wednesday. We cancel on Tuesday. I'm chairing a committee on Wednesday afternoon for economic development, and we're planning on moving forward. I can call in virtually.
There are coronavirus protocols in place for City of San Diego employees, like checking temperatures before entering buildings, physical distancing, and wearing face coverings. When asked if the person who tested positive did a temperature screening before Tuesday's council meeting, a city spokesperson said that if your temperature is high, you're not allowed in the building. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Contact tracing was supposed to be one of the primary ways we could flatten the COVID curve and reopen the economy. That hasn't really happened, despite San Diego County hiring hundreds of contact tracers and investing heavily in the program. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Trugasser looks at what went wrong.
As a refresher, here's how contact tracing is supposed to work. When someone tests positive for COVID-19, you need to get in touch with their immediate family and everyone else they've been in close contact with. If one of those contacts tests positive, you start the process over again with that person's contacts. The county has hired more than 500 case investigators and contact tracers who are supposed to spend their days calling people who've tested positive for COVID-19 and then calling all of the people the sick person has been in contact with. Those people are told to get tested and stay home for 14 days. But despite these plans, the county's program seems to come up short. The disease continues to spread through our region, and contact tracers are only calling, on average, 2.2 people for each person who tests positive. I talked to UCSD epidemiologist Rebecca Fielding-Miller about why that is. So we've heard how contact tracing is supposed to work. What can you tell us about how it's actually working?
I think the most important thing to know about contact tracing is it's really, really hard to do well. You have to get somebody who has never heard of you, might have a few reasons not to trust you. You have to call them up out of the blue, potentially give them some pretty bad news, ask them a whole lot of personal questions, and then get them to tell you everybody they've been around for the last 14 days. And then you have to get a hold of all of those people and do the same thing.
We have some numbers from the county about contact tracing interviews that I want to go over. They say they complete 76% of their interviews, which means when they're calling people who have tested positive for COVID and asking who their contacts have been. But they say on average they only get 2.2 contacts per positive case. So can you explain a little bit more what this means and what that says to you?
If you think about it, the folks who are at home all the time, who leave to go grocery shopping, those folks are much less likely to be infected with COVID. It's the folks who are being exposed a lot. Let's say you work at a restaurant or you work in a pharmacy or a bar and you're coming in contact with a lot of people, your odds of being exposed are a lot higher. So it is probably pretty likely that the people who are sort of in this pool of folks the county is trying to reach, those people have more contacts than the average person in San Diego County. Which is to say 2 is probably an undercount.
And so it seems like we're also concerned with the community outbreaks that the county announces every day. They say, bars, restaurants, offices, and so on. But then they say that only accounts for 5% of all local cases. So how could that be?
So let's say there are 2 people who get sick in a gym. 2 staff members in a gym get sick. They go home and 4 of their family members get sick. That would technically not be an outbreak.
Contact tracing was supposed to be one of our big ways out of lockdown by keeping cases contained. But is a poor contact tracing program actually worse than having none at all? So, in other words, if county officials say only 5% of cases come from outbreaks based on a subpar contact tracing program, aren't we giving people a false sense of security?
So when we are able to catch a potential flare-up in the community, whether it's at a restaurant or a child care setting or a gym, we can at least stop that from getting worse. And as we manage to bring the total case numbers down, as we manage to suppress the bigger wildfire situation, then contact tracing becomes even more important because we can stop those flare-ups before they start and the numbers get higher.
Thank you very much for explaining this to us, Rebecca Fielding-Miller. We appreciate your time.
Students at UC San Diego are back on campus with a mix of virtual and in-person classes. So far, we've seen about a dozen COVID-19 cases traced to the campus community. Extensive safety precautions are in place to protect students and faculty from the spread of COVID-19, and that includes frequent testing for those with symptoms and asymptomatic screening. The university is testing about 2,000 people per day. Campus capacity has been reduced to just over 12,000 students, and arrivals were spread out over 10 days to encourage physical distancing. San Diego County now has 4 new COVID-19 testing sites specifically for teachers and school personnel. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers says the sites will allow people to show up without an appointment.
The 4 new testing sites will be located in San Diego, Chula Vista, Del Mar, and El Cajon. The new locations were set up in partnership with the San Diego County Office of Education, but are not intended for the general public.
As you start to reopen schools, the metric that they have determined is all school employees need to get tested, 50% of them each month, 100% every 2 months. That's the metric that's been determined by state health, and that's what we're accommodating based on these structures.
The San Diego and Chula Vista sites open their doors, while the other 2 sites will start in the coming days. The first person to get a COVID-19 test at the San Diego location was Jerome Garule, a building services supervisor. He says the testing will help schools throughout the county reopen safely.
I think you should get tested so you'll know if you don't pass it on to other people. It's good to know. If I know, then I know I got to get away from other people.
While there are no state testing requirements for children, all school staff who interact with children must be tested every 2 months.
Assuming every school is open in the county, that means 40,000 employees would have to be tested each month. That's an extraordinary number.
Over the next 2 weeks, the number of COVID-19 testing sites in the county will increase from 29 to 41 locations. The additional testing centers come as county schools plan to return to in-person learning in the near future.
We have a task force here at the County Office of Education with County Health that's actually determining the start dates and really working on logistics to make sure that we have a seamless and fluid system.
San Diego is currently in the state's red tier for COVID-19 infection rates. If a school opens before any upward change in the county's COVID-19 infection rate, there will be no required school closure. The county is transitioning the majority of its COVID-19 testing sites to not require an appointment. To find a no appointment site near you or to make an appointment, visit 211sandiego.org or call 211. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And there's some good news when it comes to San Diego's libraries. Mayor Kevin Faulconer announced today a dozen locations are reopening for the first time since March. Starting Saturday, the libraries will open at 25% capacity. They will be open from 9:30 to 5:30 Monday through Saturday. The facilities will close daily for a 1-hour cleaning period at 1 p.m. San Diego State University and San Diego Unified School District are tightening plans on students returning to campus. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains which students will be coming back.
San Diego Unified, the county's largest school district, will bring thousands of high-need students back to campuses starting October 13th. During this first phase of reopening, teachers will assess how much students have fallen behind, and they'll work to mitigate the growing achievement gap amid the pandemic.
We've identified about 12,000 elementary school students who we believe need some form of in-person learning.
Richard Breyer is a school board member at San Diego Unified. He said teachers will make appointments with their students.
Appointments can look different. I mean, it could be, we're going to make an appointment for you to come in for an hour and have an assessment. Or it could be that, we want to develop a schedule with the student where they're essentially in class all day, every day.
Brewer said that in the next phase of reopening, the district hopes to reopen all elementary schools and welcome back high-needs middle and high school students. The district has not yet set a date for the second phase. Brewer said it would depend on COVID-19 infection rates in the county as well as the success of the first phase. Also, San Diego State University announced Tuesday that a small number of in-person classes would resume starting Monday, October 12th. The university moved all courses online after COVID case numbers soared among students during the first weeks of the semester. The courses moving back to in-person include mostly labs and other hands-on classes. The university also announced that it would require testing every 14 days for the approximately 2,100 students participating in these classes. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
There's a growing child care crisis in our county and statewide as daycare centers close due to COVID-19. KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser says a union of domestic workers is asking the state for help.
5,000 providers. Monday never came.
Lynn James is a child care provider in San Diego. She says businesses like hers need more help from the government.
And from those 5,000 more children, they have no daycare. It's gone. Those families, many of essential workers, had nowhere to send their children.
State rules put in place at the onset of the pandemic have forced child care providers to cut class sizes while costs for additional staffing and cleaning supplies have gone up. Now, nearly 7 months later, many are going out of business. Child Care Providers United, a project of the union United Domestic Workers, says 5,000 providers statewide have had to close. They're asking for additional funding from the government.
Governor Newsom must act today.
A study from UC Berkeley found that in Southern California, 62% of child care programs experienced a loss of income due to low attendance or families not paying the fees, and 81% made staffing changes, including laying off employees or cutting benefits. Miran Algori, a child care provider in Chula Vista, says more centers will close soon.
Families and providers need Governor Gavin Newsom and state legislators to intervene. We need them to intervene and help stabilize childcare immediately before it's too late.
The San Diego County Board of Supervisors created a $25 million grant program for local child care providers. The money is expected to be awarded soon. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
It was nice while it lasted, but now you'll have to pay for parking in the city of San Diego. Enforcement was put on hold for months, allowing drivers to disregard meters and other parking restrictions. The city is giving a 2-week grace period. If you park in a street sweeping area, don't feed the meter, or if you ignore curb time limits, you'll get a written warning. Then it's back to full enforcement October 15th. There's been a renaissance of bike riding in San Diego County amid the pandemic. There are also fewer bike crashes and injuries, perhaps because of less traffic. As KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen tells us, advocates want that trend to continue.
I'm biking with Oscar Tavera through Terralta Park, one of the stopping points on the self-guided Black, Indigenous, and People of Color history ride. Tavera is a board member of Bike SD and helped organize a small group bike ride along the tour. Terralta Park was included because of its significance to the history of City Heights.
The site itself is a great visual representation of what can be achieved. The community organizers were able to advocate for this park after the State Route 15 was constructed. It bisected the two communities, but this park was able to kind of join them together.
It's making street-level connections like these that Tavera sees as central to Bike SD's mission. And one of the few positives of the pandemic is that people have become more apt to get on a bike and explore their city. He and others are hopeful that the new habits stick after the pandemic is over.
I think getting the people more comfortable with understanding the logistics of the road and feeling just even being comfortable riding next to cars, I think getting those families and getting those daily commuters out of their cars and understanding that biking is a possible alternative, not every day, but most of the time, could be a good solution long term.
The Regional Transportation Planning Agency, SANDAG, measured a 42% increase in bike trips countywide from mid-March to mid-August this year compared to last year. Meanwhile, cyclist injuries from collisions were down 19% in the city of San Diego during that period. So more people are biking and fewer are getting injured.
And then as you get more people there is a critical mass and drivers become more aware, and I think we have to do all of it.
County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher also sees a window of opportunity to make lasting change to reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. His office recently launched a program to give away up to 400 electric bikes to county residents. He says e-bikes are especially promising in San Diego, which is spread out and has lots of hills.
And I think this program is a perfect complement to come at the right time to inject electric bikes in there, which are much easier to use as a commuting than a traditional bicycle. And so I think we really need to think about, as we come out of this, how do we maintain and expand the progress we've seen in this area.
One life lost is too many. One person injured is too many.
Hassan Ikrada is executive director of SANDAG, which gathered the cycling data. SANDAG recently completed 8 new traffic circles in the city of San Diego, meant to slow down cars and improve visibility of cyclists. Ikrada says they're an improvement, but they're still not enough.
Eventually, we have to get to a place where we figure out how we separate bikes from traffic. And I think our long-term vision for San Diego region will envision a bike network that will provide San Diegans the ability to ride without having a fear of hit by a car.
Like Tavera and Fletcher, Ikrada hopes the increased interest in biking brought on by the pandemic will change mindsets around building new protected bike lanes. Some projects have been delayed by several years, often under pressure from residents who don't want to sacrifice any road space currently dedicated to cars.
We need our communities to be willing to give up something they got used to just simply because we believe a multimodal approach to any community is a great way to sustain that community.
Advocates say the great promise of the bike boom during the pandemic is expanding their constituency. Things like e-bikes and safe protected bike lanes can make biking accessible to more people, like older adults or families with small children.
Hey, this could be a simple thing that you could start doing on the weekend, and it's not a 20-mile commute, but maybe just starting around your block in the neighborhood.
Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
San Diego State's fall football season is back on. This week, the Mountain West Conference released its updated 2020 schedule. The league will play 8 games plus a championship game. SDSU will open its season against UNLV on October 24th at its new temporary home in Carson. Their first away game will be on Halloween at Utah State. The Aztecs are coming off a 10-3 season. They'll return to San Diego and their brand new stadium in Mission Valley in 2022. COVID has forced film festivals to postpone and regroup online. For San Diego, that means the busy fall film festival season has become even more crowded. KPBS film critic Beth Accomando previews the GI Film Festival and San Diego Italian Film Festival that are now underway.
The GI Film Festival and the San Diego Italian Film Festival both have strong perspectives to share. The GI Film Festival showcases films by, for, and about military and veterans. It has an advisory committee that includes veterans.
As a combat veteran myself, I know that not many people other than my immediate family knows any stories that I connected with personally or hardships that I had while I was in uniform. So a lot of history is yet still untold. This is one of the ways that the GI Film Festival is making such a huge difference in telling those untold stories.
In their own words, is one of 6 documentaries screening at this year's virtual showcase. The film interviews some of the surviving Tuskegee Airmen.
Tuskegee Airmen were the first African-American fighter pilots that served in World War II. Just a brief summary of them. This was the first time that African Americans were given the opportunity to serve in officer roles. It was sort of a test by the Air Force, the Army and the Air Force. Along with other units, the military was desegregated in 1948.
The film was co-directed by Denton Atkinson and Brian Williams.
One of the things that we realize is that these were the precursors to Rosa Parks. To Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, these men paved the way for them.
The film gathers remarkable personal stories.
Boom, I look up and there's a hole on top of the canopy, and fire came up out of the floor. I landed right in the middle of the guys who shot me down. So I spent 9 months in Germany as a POW.
Although they might not have seen themselves as activists, the Tuskegee Airmen helped change America. The San Diego Italian Film Festival has made activism this year's theme.
And so we selected the movies having in mind this general theme, activism. This year is an election year. We really believe that everybody needs to do their part. But our movies are not going to be just about politics or immigration, but also about art, also about disability, also about gender inequality, also about inclusion.
The festival opens on Thursday with a film titled It Will Be Chaos, which seems all too fitting in a year of a pandemic and social unrest. Another film with a title that challenges you is Normal.
What is normal anymore, but also it touches upon a concept of normality related to gender stereotypes in Italy, and it's very experimental. So our audience really needs to go into it having not just an open mind, but just thinking, okay, this is going to be something that I would not expect from a normal movie.
The festival also wants to challenge audiences to reconsider what normal means in terms of art and cinema. The film Michelangelo Infinito, for example, shatters the traditional documentary form in order to create a dynamic portrait of the Renaissance artist.
Activism is of course about social justice, but also about art, because art has the power to transform our lives and has also the power to transform an artist's life. And we're gonna see and experience that for Michelangelo.
And redefining what an Italian perspective can be is a film about a Muslim man called Bangla.
It deals with identity in terms of where your traditions from your family, where you're born, where do you feel you belong, and the struggle between that.
Films are available Thursday through Saturday each week in October. There will also be a Zoom discussion each following Sunday morning. The early start time is to allow filmmakers with a 9-hour time difference in Italy to join the conversation. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And that is all for this special edition of KPBS News. For all of us here at KPBS, I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe.